Imagine waking up tomorrow and your body decides to hit the rewind button on every rep you ever did, erasing the sweat, the strength, the confidence you built over years. What would that feel like? Would you notice it in the mirror, in the way you breathe up a flight of stairs, or in the sudden heaviness of a simple push-up? In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens when you stop training, from the first hours of withdrawal to the slow, often invisible changes that take place over weeks and months. By the end, you'll understand why the off-season can feel like a loss of identity, and more importantly, how you can protect yourself from the hidden pitfalls that most people never even think about. I'm a certified strength coach who spent a decade competing at the highest level, and I've seen athletes go from peak performance to total shutdown in a matter of weeks. I've also helped countless people bounce back after injuries, layoffs, or just a long vacation. The reason this matters is simple. Whether you're forced into a break, recovering from an injury, or just feeling burnt out, knowing what's really happening inside your body can stop the panic, keep you from making bad decisions, and set you up for a smoother comeback. First, let's talk about the very first 24 to 48 hours after you stop moving. Your muscles are still full of glycogen, the stored carbohydrate that fuels high-intensity work. As soon as you stop training, that glycogen starts to dwindle because you're no longer replenishing it with the same amount of carbs and the same level of demand. The result? You'll feel a subtle drop in endurance, a kind of flat, tired sensation that makes even a short jog feel harder than usual. At the same time, your nervous system begins to decondition. The motor units, the nerve fibers that fire to contract your muscles, fire less frequently, and you may notice a slight loss of coordination. That's why after a few days of no training, you might feel a little clumsier, as if your body has forgotten how to move smoothly. Hormones also take a quick swing. Cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes because your body interprets the sudden drop in activity as a threat to its equilibrium. Meanwhile, testosterone, the hormone that supports muscle growth and recovery, begins to dip. This hormonal shift can affect your mood, your appetite, and even your sleep quality. Blood flow changes as well. The capillaries that were constantly being recruited during exercise start to shrink a bit, and you may notice a small increase in your resting heart rate. All of these changes happen quietly, often without you even realizing it. Now, move past that first weekend into the first week and you'll start to see more pronounced effects. Muscle atrophy, the shrinking of muscle fibers, begins at a rate of about 0.5% per week. It sounds small, but after a couple of weeks you'll notice tighter shirts and a loss of that hard feeling you were used to. Your cardiovascular system isn't spared either. Your maximum oxygen uptake, the gold standard for aerobic fitness, can drop by 5 to 7% each week you're inactive. That means everyday activities like climbing a flight of stairs or carrying groceries start to feel more taxing. Your resting metabolic rate, the number of calories you burn at rest, also slows down, making weight gain easier even if you haven't changed your eating habits. Meanwhile, the synovial fluid that lubricates your joints is produced less, leading to a subtle stiffness that can become more noticeable as weeks pass. What's fascinating is how these systems are interconnected. As muscle size shrinks, the demand for oxygen drops, which in turn eases the workload on the heart, reinforcing the decline in aerobic capacity. The hormonal environment that favors catabolism, the breakdown of tissue, becomes more dominant, further accelerating muscle loss. And because you're moving less, your insulin sensitivity drops, meaning your body becomes less efficient at handling carbs, setting the stage for increased fat storage. At this point, you might be thinking about the practical side of things. How do you know if you're on the right track? What can you do right now to slow down this cascade? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you've experienced when you've taken a break from training. Beyond the first month, the body continues to adapt, but the rate of change slows. By the end of the third month, you could be looking at a loss of roughly 15% of your original muscle mass if you've done nothing to stimulate it. Your heart stroke volume, the amount of blood pumped per beat, decreases, causing a modest rise in resting heart rate that can linger even after you resume exercise. The connective tissue around your joints becomes less pliable, increasing the risk of injury when you finally decide to lift again. And on a psychological level, the habit loops that once made training feel automatic start to fade, making it harder to get back into the rhythm you once had. Understanding these timelines is crucial because it shows that the off-season isn't just a mental break, it's a physiological shift that can have lasting consequences if ignored. The good news is that each of these changes is reversible, but the speed and ease of reversal depend on how you approach the comeback. You'll hear more about the strategies to preserve your hard-earned gains and the science behind a smart re-entry later on. If you're finding this insight eye-opening, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next part where we dive into the exact protocols that let you hit the reset button without losing everything you built. So, let's talk about the hidden lever that can turn a dreaded shutdown into a strategic pause. Most people assume that once you stop moving, everything you build simply melts away like ice in the sun. The truth is a little more nuanced. Your body is constantly negotiating between preservation and adaptation, and if you give it the right signals, you can actually retain a surprising amount of what you earned while you're away from the gym. First, think about the neuromuscular connection. Even when you're not lifting, your brain still remembers the pathways it forged through years of practice. Those motor patterns don't disappear overnight. They linger in the spinal cord and cortex, ready to be reactivated the moment you decide to move again. The key is to keep those pathways lightly stimulated. Simple activities like bodyweight squats, a few push-ups, or even a short walk with purposeful movement can keep the neural circuitry humming. It's not about building new strength, but about preventing the use it or lose it signal from going into overdrive. Next, consider your protein intake. When you're in a period of reduced activity, the body's demand for amino acids drops, but the need to preserve existing muscle tissue remains. By maintaining a modest protein target, roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight for most active individuals, you give your muscles the building blocks they need to stay intact. Pair that with a slight calorie adjustment. You don't have to slash your intake dramatically, but trimming a few hundred calories can help offset the slower metabolism that comes with less movement. Think of it as fine-tuning your fuel supply so you don't end up storing excess fat while you're in a low-output mode. Cardiovascular health is another area where a gentle approach pays dividends. The heart is remarkably adaptable, and a few minutes of low-intensity cardio each day can blunt the decline in stroke volume that typically follows a break. Activities like brisk walking, light cycling, or even a steady-state jog for 10 to 15 minutes keep the blood moving, maintain capillary density, and preserve a healthier resting heart rate. The goal isn't to chase a new personal record, but to keep the circulatory system engaged enough that when you return to higher intensity, the gap isn't as wide. Now, let's address the hormonal roller coaster. When you stop training, cortisol, your stress hormone, tends to climb while testosterone can dip. This shift can make you feel more fatigued and less motivated. One of the most effective ways to counteract that is to prioritize sleep and stress management. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality rest and incorporate relaxation techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, or even a short yoga session. By keeping cortisol in check, you protect not only your muscle tissue but also your mental clarity, which is crucial for a smooth comeback. Mobility and joint health often get overlooked during a break, yet they're essential for preventing injury when you ramp back up. The synovial fluid that lubricates your joints is produced in response to movement, so a lack of activity can make you feel stiff. Simple dynamic stretches, leg swings, arm circles, hip openers, performed daily can keep that fluid flowing. Additionally, foam rolling or using a massage ball for a few minutes each day helps break down adhesions and promotes healthy connective tissue. Think of it as maintenance work that keeps your body ready for the next load. All of these strategies together create a safety net that dramatically slows the rate of loss. Scientists have shown that with minimal but consistent stimulus, you can keep muscle loss to well under 0.5% per week, compared to the typical 0.5 to 0.8% when you go completely cold turkey. That difference adds up over months, meaning you'll have a much smaller gap to close when you finally decide to train again. So, what does a smart re-entry look like? Imagine you've taken a 6-week pause. You return with a plan that respects the loss you've experienced while leveraging the preserved neural pathways and cardiovascular base you've maintained. The first week should focus on re-establishing movement patterns with low volume and high frequency. Think 3 to 4 sessions of full body work, each consisting of compound movements at roughly 60% of the load you used pre-break. Keep the rep range in the moderate zone, around 8 to 12 reps, and prioritize perfect form. This approach reawakens the motor units without overwhelming the tissues that have adapted to a lower load. In week 2, you can start to increase the load slightly, perhaps moving up to 70% of your previous max, while reducing the frequency to 3 sessions. Introduce a few isolation exercises to target any muscle groups that feel particularly weak. By week 3, you should feel comfortable adding a 4th day and pushing the intensity to around 80% of your former peak. Throughout this progression, listen to your body. If you notice excessive soreness, joint pain, or a lingering sense of fatigue, dial back a notch. Recovery is still crucial, and the heart of a successful comeback is patience. Psychologically, the biggest hurdle is often the mental narrative that you've lost your gains. This mindset can sabotage your effort before you even step onto the floor. To combat that, set micro goals that celebrate incremental improvements, like adding a kilogram or 2 to a lift or shaving a few seconds off a run. Celebrate those wins publicly if you're comfortable. Post a short update in the comments or share a quick clip on social media. The positive reinforcement reinforces the habit loops that make training feel automatic again. Now, let's circle back to the core insight that can change how you view any off-season. The body isn't a fragile house of cards that collapses the moment you stop training. It's a dynamic system that thrives on balance. By integrating light movement, adequate nutrition, sleep, and stress management, you create a buffer that preserves most of what you earned. When the time comes to return, the transition feels less like a climb out of a deep well and more like stepping back onto a familiar path. What do you think about these approaches? Have you ever tried a low-intensity maintenance phase during a break? And if so, how did it affect your comeback? Drop your experiences in the comments. I love reading how different people navigate this part of the journey. If any of this resonated with you, a quick like lets the algorithm know that you found value here, and it helps more folks discover these insights. And of course, if you haven't already, consider hitting that subscribe button so you won't miss the next episode where we break down specific workout templates, nutrition timing tricks, and mental strategies to accelerate your return to form. Remember, the goal isn't to avoid every setback. Life will always throw curveballs. The goal is to equip yourself with tools that make those curveballs manageable, so you can stay on track without sacrificing the hard work you've already put in. Stay curious, stay consistent, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep moving, even if it's just a little, and you'll be amazed at how resilient your body truly is.